Anchor your protein, surround with fiber, and make sure that you have a good fat, like avocado, olive oil, things like that, that are really beneficial to your microbes.
You're listening to the Plant-Based Diet Podcast, where we talk about all things plant-based. I'm Esther Garfin, the host of this show and founder of Alternative Food Network. Join me and my amazing array of guests who are a mix of healthcare professionals, industry executives, and people with an interesting story to tell about their plant-based journey. Let us help you with your journey wherever you're at to learn the what, why, and how to eat plant-based. Today, we're talking about the gut microbiome and the microbes that affect your immune system, your metabolism, your mood, and even your risk for chronic disease. And guess what? What you eat can change that ecosystem. We're going to get a science primer on what makes our gut microbiome tick and why plant-based foods are some of its most powerful fuel sources. I'm joined by Anu Simh, a board-certified functional health coach and microbiome educator. She specializes in helping people improve metabolism, gut health, and microbial resilience using evidence-based nutrition and lifestyle strategies. She's the author of Flourish from Within, Feed Your Gut for Lifelong Health, and she runs the Gut Clarity Lab program to help build a resilient microbiome. You can find the link to the Gut Clarity Lab in the show notes, and we will be doing a giveaway of the book to one lucky newsletter subscriber. So if you're not yet a subscriber to Alternative Food Network's free monthly newsletter, which offers new recipes, giveaways, and information on our latest podcasts all in one place, please go to alternativefoodnetwork.com and click the newsletter sign up button. Also, you can find more of Alternative Food Network's content on Instagram at Alternative Food Network and on Alternative Food Network's YouTube channel and LinkedIn page. As for today's episode, if you've ever wondered how fiber, plant diversity, and whole foods can transform your gut for the better, please stay tuned. Hello, Anu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Esther. Pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited to talk about the gut microbiome. So I'm going to ask you right off the bat, why should we care about the gut microbiome?
Yes, that's such a great question. And when we talk about the gut microbiome in particular, we're talking about the ecosystem of microbes that live primarily in the large intestine, along with all the genes that they carry and also the compounds that they produce. So I often describe it as an invisible organ. 70% of your immune system is in your gut. 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. There's so many things that are happening that the microbes are really helping us with. So it makes a lot of sense to feed them. So we're creating these opportunities for optimal health. We now know that the brain and the gut are connected. There's a bidirectionality, and there's a brain-gut microbiome loop. So anything that happens in the gut, the brain is perceiving it as good information or a threat. So when you're stressed, when you're highly stressed, it's not affecting just the gut, it's affecting the brain too. Our microbes, from an evolutionary standpoint, they have evolved with us. They digest things like plant compounds, fibers, polyphenols, that we are not able to, and they do that breaking down of these compounds for us. They transform bile acids. They produce some incredible compounds called short-chain fatty acids that are so important for us in so many different ways, from immune health to gut barrier, integrity, and things like that. So I sort of call them our forever guests. There's never been a time when they've not been with us. I mean, maybe they came to us at birth, or maybe even before, some research is showing, and they're going to be with us. So it just makes sense to take care of them. And their preferred fuel is fiber. That is what they digest, they break down, and produce all of these wonderful compounds for us. So we are in this symbiotic partnership with these microbes, and we give them a place to live and fuel that they love, and they help us by producing all of these metabolites that really in turn helps us.
And you mentioned fiber is key. So is that why you believe in the benefits of plant-based foods?
Yes,
for the microbiome?
Yes. Well, I do believe that a plant-based or a plant-forward diet is really important, something that they perceive as fuel. So that's the reason it becomes important. And if you really compare ourselves to traditional populations, even the modern traditional populations, the difference in the microbial pattern is very, very clear. They have a lot more diversity, meaning they have way more species than we do. And a lot of it could be attributed to the modern life and the kinds of foods that we eat.
So, what is it about plants that benefit gut health? Is it the plants themselves? Or is, let's say, someone who's on a plant forward diet, is it the fact that perhaps they're eating less meat?
That's a great question. So, from an evolutionary standpoint, our microbes are experts in carbohydrate fermentation, saccharolytic fermentation, it's called. So, when we eat, let's say we have a bowl of lentils or something like that, or veggies, the fiber is not something that we're able to digest. We don't have the capacity to do that. So it goes directly to the colon, and there these microbes feast on it and they digest it for us and then produce all of these incredible metabolites or compounds that in turn is helping us in so many different ways. So the functions of these microbes become really important, and that's based on the kind of foods that we feed them. So one way to look at it, Esther, is I don't put this into a category of don't eat meat or eat. I think I tell my clients, anchor your protein, whatever the protein is it plant or animal, but surround with fiber sources. The more diversity you have in your plant foods, the more diversity you have in your microbial population. And up until now, we really don't have a very clear idea of what a healthy microbiome is. But what we do know is a healthy microbiome is a resilient microbiome. And a resilient microbiome is a microbiome that has a lot of diversity. That means they have different species. And there's also evenness in the species. Because these microbes it's not just about how many there are, but what are some of the functions that they are doing for us. So all of this is connected to plant diversity. Because think about it, when you think about plant-based diversity, we have so many things like polyphenols, beta-glucans, resistant starch. All of these are parts of this fiber compounds that really feed these microbes.
And just to make it crystal clear for people who are listening, when you're talking about plant-based foods and diversity, you're really talking about whole food plant-based. I mean, we're not talking about processed plant-based foods.
Yeah. And that's the reason I don't really go into vegan, omnivore, all of that. I'm just saying plant-based or plant-forward really means that you're eating whole foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, foods that are rich in this resistant starch. All of these foods that you're not able to digest, but it goes to the colon and the microbiome or the microbes do the work for you.
And are there scientific studies that show the positive effects of a plant-based diet or plant foods on the microbiome?
Absolutely. There are several. In fact, when I was writing the book, I spent about 3 years just researching these studies. They're incredible. When the Human Microbiome Project started, I think back in 2007, 8, we knew that fiber is important, but it's amazing to see how many new studies have come out since then. And the one that comes to mind is the American Gut Project. They really looked at people who are eating more than 30 plant compounds of foods or plant inputs per week compared to those who didn't. And they clearly saw that there was a higher microbial diversity in people who ate a lot of plant foods.
Perhaps we can include it as a link
Yes,
in
I could
our show
definitely
notes.
use it in show notes. I know in 2021, there was a Stanford study that really looked at fiber versus fermented foods. And they noticed that fermented foods really increased microbial diversity, but it also it decreased inflammation.
So on the fermented food side of things, Does that include fermented dairy as well, or are we just talking about fermented plant foods?
I think there's a lot of confusion around. If you don't mind me explaining that, I
Sure.
think fermented foods is it's confusing for people between probiotics, prebiotics, and fermented foods. Probiotics is basically anything that confers some kind of benefit to you as a host. And that could be like a supplement or foods like maybe yogurt that has live microbes in them. Prebiotics, on the other hand, are foods and fibers that actually help these microbes grow in the gut. So that could be polyphenols, fiber, inulin, things like that. And fermented foods are foods that really break down the food in such a way that our body is able to digest it better. So your pH decreases, you produce things like lactic acid, acetic acid, things like that. And fermented foods benefit you in a different way. Some fermented foods actually also have live microbes in them. So that's a difference. So probiotics are microbes themselves. Prebiotics are the foods that feed the microbes, and fermented foods are whole foods that may contain microbes, but definitely really contain fermentation byproducts. So that would be how I would look at it.
Okay.
So
All important for the gut microbiome.
exactly. Which yogurt do I buy? Don't be fooled by the marketing. Some of them look absolutely beautiful. And I know I spent so much time on this, but I'm still attracted to that shiny object, right? Wow, this looks so pretty. Look at that glass bottle. But that's not as important as looking at the label and saying, does this really have live microbes? Does it have microbes that have been studied? Let's say you look at a yogurt that has BB lactis 12 or lactobacillus reuteri, things like that have been really studied, then you know that you can't go wrong with it. You can take that and hope that it confers some kind of benefit for you as the host. Your listeners could be entirely plant-based, vegan, or they may be including dairy. Some people are very, very sensitive to dairy because they're not able to digest the casein or the lactose in it. But yogurts seems to be a little bit more easy to digest for most people. And if that is not your cup of tea, then there's always soy yogurt, which also confers a lot of benefits to you. And soy has all of the essential amino acids, and it's a great protein for someone who's entirely plant-based.
And some examples of plant fermented foods would be what?
I personally have sauerkraut every day. It's part of when I look at it, Esther, I don't look at my food as, okay, I'm making this recipe. I'm looking at it in a very formatted way. I'm looking at what is it that my microbiome really wants every single day. It wants diversity. So I first anchor the protein, and for me, the protein could be tofu, tempeh, edamame, or maybe some lentils, whatever, that particular day. And then I surround with several kinds of greens, cruciferous veggies, broccoli. If I did broccoli from Whole Foods one day, I might do Chinese broccoli another day, or I might do broccoli sprouts, just changing it up a little bit. Because none of us really have the time to sit and just carve out a recipe every single day. But if you have a formatted version of eating, then you don't need a bunch of food rules. I think that's exhausting, for trying to find like different food rules. So anchor your protein, surround with fiber, and make sure that you have a good fat, like avocado, olive oil, things like that are really beneficial to your microbes. A lot of studies are showing that they do much better with these kind of fats versus saturated fat. It comes from red meat.
And is this the type of thing that you talk about in your book? I know you have a book,
Yeah.
which we are going to be able to give away to our newsletter subscribers. It's called Flourish from Within, Feed Your Gut for Lifelong Health. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in that book?
Yeah. I mainly wrote it because my clients were saying, I need a place where I can get all the information about the microbiome, maybe have a clearer roadmap of how I should eat and some recipes to support
Right.
it. So I took that very, very seriously and I put it all together. The first 10 chapters are really for you to understand about the microbiome in very simple layperson terms. The second section is what I call the flourish diet. It's based on the diets that have been studied and really well studied, like the Mediterranean diet or the Mind diet and things like that. And all of them have one thing that they say. They say increase fiber, increase your plant compounds, and decrease saturated fat, decrease sodium. These are commonalities between all of these different diets. So that's the reason I came up with anchor your protein, surround with fiber, because so regardless of what kind of diet you follow, I wanted it to work for you,
Right.
and regardless of which culture you come from, we all have fibrous foods in every culture, be it Mexican or Indian or Italian. So the book has recipes from different cultures, different travels that I've done over the years, and the recipes that I love and that are high in fiber, low in saturated fat, things that really, really do help the microbiome be healthy, because we want diversity in the microbiome. And that way, when we do travel overseas or something, our microbiome is resilient enough to be able to withstand those changes. Or we take a round of antibiotics, we're not bombarded with problems because of that, because we have a resilient microbiome.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions on what you just said, but since you just mentioned antibiotics, any tips for those on antibiotics?
The interesting thing to note is microbes themselves and the microbiome very malleable. You could go on antibiotics, and then within a few weeks, if you start feeding them the right kinds of food, make sure your sleep is good, your stress is low, your microbes recover. Your microbiome recovers. So that's good news for us. That's fantastic. So we can go through something like a stressful situation, or taking like antibiotics, and still recover from it. So we don't need to do anything beyond that. And of course, there are probiotics that you can take. The one thing about probiotics is it's very highly individualized. They may or may not stick within you as a live microbe. So some are just transient. When you're taking something, they may be of benefit to you, but when you stop taking it, maybe not. So I always say feed your microbes. It's cheaper and it's long term rather than taking a fancy supplement. The one supplement, which it's not a probiotic, but in yeast, is Saccharomyces boulardii. I almost always never travel without it, because you don't know when you're going to be hit with traveler's diarrhea. So this is an easy add-in to your trap.
What did you say it is called?
It's called Saccharomyces boulardii. I'll add it to the show notes if you like.
Perfect. Yes.
And, I had a friend who went to Morocco, and she said, oh my gosh, that supplement saved me. And I'm not a big supplement person. I believe food first, diet and lifestyle. But that's one that I carry with me, for me personally.
Okay, that sounds like a good tip. Okay, so for someone on antibiotics, sticking to this roadmap of eating, where you have your anchor protein and an array of fibrous foods, that should do the trick.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference whether one eats a vegetable raw, let's say in a salad, versus cooked vegetables, warmed up vegetables?
That's a great question, Esther. From a perspective of microbes, I haven't seen any study that's come out that specifically mentions that. From a micronutrient perspective, you don't ever want to overcook your veggies, because you're going to lose a lot of that in the water, right? So I say just mix it up, If you're not very clear about the answer, it just makes sense to say I'll have a little bit of raw veggies. I mean, from a blood sugar perspective, it really makes sense to have a huge salad first, then add, for example, even things like beans and lentils can up your blood sugar if you're not used to it. So if you always start with some great big salad and then have some good protein and then add these things like beans and lentils that perhaps you're not used to, but you want to give it a try, then your blood sugar tends to be a little bit more even as well.
Do you have an opinion on commercial lab test kits for the microbiome?
Yes, I think it's fascinating. It's definitely not a diagnostic test. It's not going to tell you like let's say a blood panel, it's not going to give you information like that. But what I think is great is the new technology that is available today. It's whole genome sequencing. You can actually look at your fecal sample, and it's a pretty good representation of your distal colon, what kind of microbes are in your distal colon. So looking at that fecal sample will give you a pretty good idea of who's there. So it's from a curiosity perspective, I think it's fantastic, but it's very iterative, because your microbiome is malleable, things keep changing. So I would say if you do want to get a test done, make sure it's whole genome sequencing, because then you're looking at the DNA of all of those microbes that are within you. And I feel like when you test, you need to kind of follow through. And why did you test? If you're testing just for information, that's fine, but it's a data point. What are you going to do if you find out that you have low diversity, or you don't have the keystone species, or maybe your protein fermentation is not serving you? Then we can make those changes. So it's a good starting point.
But it is a moment in time.
It really depends on who's doing the test, right? If you are, let's say you've been on antibiotics, or you have a life that is highly stressed, your nervous system is really a little bit jittery, you're not sleeping well, sleep is an issue, there's not a lot of plant-based diversity in your diet, then I don't think we even need a test. We can start with basics. We build a foundation. And then when you build that foundation, then the curiosity is, okay, I've done all this work. Do I need a test to see where I am? Yes, it can totally hold that space for you. But then on the other end of the thing is, if you have been doing all of this, you've been eating really well and doing all the things right for your microbiome, and you're just curious, like, given all of this, I'm wondering where my microbes are. I think it's great to just get a starting point on that.
So how do our genetics factor in here?
What's good, what I can control is what I do on top of the genetics, the epigenetics and the nutrigenomics, the nutrition that I put into my body. How do I take care of my stress? How do I sleep? All of that really matters so much. So genes are such a small part of it, I mean, anything you speak about today, like cancer, cardiovascular issues, I think diet and lifestyle play a huge role. And it's the same thing with microbes. Maybe your starting point, what you inherited from your mom, and that's it. That's the family heirloom that's passed on from generations, right? And let's say that wasn't the best starting point. Maybe you were a C-section baby, or maybe you were not breastfed. But that's not the end of the story. There are so many things that we can do today. I think it becomes the most important thing for us is treating it as a family heirloom, feeding and teaching our children how to eat right for their forever guests.
Well, that seems like a great way to end the episode. If someone wants to get in touch with you, where's the best place to do that?
Well, Instagram, 9 Arms of Wellness. My website is also 9armsofwellness.com. And the book is another way to get to know what I do. I staff people with a gut test because people are curious, but always remember that is not the end of anything. It's a starting point. And then I give them a protocol to support not just their gut health, but the immune health, their hormonal health. Everything is connected because it's all about systems biology. We can't really look at this in separate things. We need to connect the dots.
All right. Well, this has been a very informative episode. I hope that people learn something about how to take care of their gut microbiome. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Esther. It was a pleasure.
I hope you found this helpful. Please share, rate, leave a review, and follow Plant-Based Diet on your favorite podcast listening platform. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Alternative Food Network. We also publish a monthly newsletter that includes plant-based recipes, links to our latest episodes, and the occasional giveaway. You can subscribe for free by going to our website at alternativefoodnetwork.com and click the newsletter sign up button. Until next time, thanks for listening. All content provided or opinions expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please seek advice from your doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner.